encountered J.A. Rogers 4 or 5 years ago. J.A. Rogers didn't say he was a historian. He was a searcher trying to find the role of the African personality in world history. He worked over 50 years of his life, gave his service, died broke. What gives you the audacity to think that you can dismiss Rogers out of hand, and what gave you the maturity to think that you could judge a writer like Cheikh Anta Diop, the finest historical writer we have produced in the 20th century?
Sir, stay with that.
I try to ask questions of all the material I read. I try to answer those questions on the basis of the evidence, the historical evidence. It all, in my view, comes down to that. And I do not wish to criticize any individual at all. I am dealing only with written work. The people who write that, I do not always know, and I have no individual or personal criticism of them. This is the way scholars, I'm sure, as you know, proceed, and that is simply what I did in my book. I will leave it to everyone who reads the book to judge what I did.
Professor Clarke?
I think you have emphasized too much the word black, and we've made the same mistake. Black tells you how you look, but it don't tell you who you are. The proper name of a people must always relate to land, history, and culture. I did not say Cleopatra was black. I quoted someone else who inferred that. My defense of Cleopatra is not on her blackness, but on no matter whatever she was born in Africa. Her manipulation of Mark Antony and Caesar kept the worst aspect of Roman rule from the backs of Africa. I defend her as an African nationalist, and that's a good defense. And no matter what she did with her wares in and out of bed, there's a whole lot of people got less for it.
Professor Lefkowitz, you may ask a question of Professor Clarke.
Professor Clarke, do you think that we should always judge history in terms of race?
Look, there was no such thing as race in the psyche of the world until the Europeans put it into the psyche of the world. The Africans knew nothing about race and didn't think they belonged to anything called a race. And when the Africans saw the Europeans, because they have a traditional hospitality to strangers, they didn't fight them, they didn't kill, they were curious about them. And when the African explorers, especially Mungo Park, went into Africa, nobody hurt him, nobody shot at him, nobody shot any arrows at him. The Europeans went in peacefully, but the Africans heard that Mungo Park was a pork eater. Most people don't know it, but Africans were not great pork eaters, and they're not great pork eaters today. Pork was a meat you ate in certain ceremonies, certain times a year. But we were not great pork eaters before we came to the United States or were forced to the United States. But in the United States, we had to eat the part of the pig that white folks threw away, so we made delicacies out of it and survived. I had this argument with Malcolm X. I said, if it wasn't for the black woman making delicacies out of pig feet, pig heels, guts, chitlins, you and I would be here arguing the point. I'm afraid that you're not only a delinquent in African history, you're delinquent in African folklore. So much of our history is tied up with our folklore, but Europe has introduced words that didn't exist in anyone's vocabulary before. No one ever thought of anybody being inferior or superior. Intelligent people don't even a human being can't fall into that category. And nobody had the extensive problem the Europeans had with women, because in the period of feudalism in Europe that lasted over 1,000 years, the white woman in Europe was a vassal.
Right.
But the African woman has never been a vassal in that sense. If we read Cheikh Anta Diop's The Culture Unity of Black Africa, dealing with the history of the matriarch, he's got all evidence right there that we were the first people to support a woman as head of state. We were the first people to support a woman as riding head of her army. We were the first people to make women a god.